You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan Schwarting and Kaan Bayazit.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru atışını kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Yuma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet. Ve
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 42 of the Black Eagles podcast. I am your host, Sinan Schwarting, live and direct from New York City. And I am accompanied by my co-host, Kaan Bayazit, coming in from Belgium. Round of applause, everybody. What do you say, sir?
Hey everyone, it took us a while to line up our schedules after another unfortunate event this season for Beşiktaş in the league. We wanted to give everyone a little bit of time, and we decided to turn this episode into something a little bit different because, like we were talking about just before we started recording, is we don't want to sound like a broken record. So we decided to let some of our listeners have their say on the current situation at Beşiktaş.
And specifically, I want to interject that we kind of convened the council here. And in fact, we actually brought in a number of voices you listeners will have heard before. People who have contributed to the After the Beeps, for example. You know, we gave priority to people who've already had a voice on the show, which is also like a shout out to anyone out there who has not contributed in After the Beep but may want to in the future. That's something to think about. You know, we'll be giving priority to those of you who have made an appearance for these kinds of episodes. But yeah, so we've convened the council, so to speak, right? To bring some nerd speak into
Council
it.
of Elders.
Yeah. The rings.
The Council of Eternia.
But so yeah, sorry to interrupt there. I just wanted to spice up that point a little. But yeah, go on then, Kat.
Yeah, so we got a bunch of people who sent in their thoughts, and I don't think we're going to cut those down. We're not going to edit those out. I think there's going to be a little bit of perhaps some harsh words here and there, but we didn't want to edit those out because I think those are raw emotions.
Exactly. Yeah. No beeps today. Be warned. If you have children, put them in the other room while you're listening. This is not going to be a clean episode. And I want that noted as the guy in charge of post-production. I've been given the clearance to let these slide.
Yeah, and it's just, for people who listen to the podcast and maybe think, well, Sinan and Kaan, they're overreacting or whatever. I think that this is something that's living among most of the fans right now, where I'm still puzzled by the fact that the fans in the stadium are relatively they're not calling for heads yet, although this game there were some banners like where's the money, Fikret Orman, stuff like that, which maybe we'll get into as well. But most of this episode will probably be reactions from listeners, from friends from the podcast. So that's going to be the bulk of the podcast. But we're going to briefly go over that Sivasspor game. That hopefully it will turn out to be that infamous Sivasspor game. We're going to go over it briefly, and then we're just going to talk about a few other things, and then pass on the microphone to our special guests, so to speak.
And I suppose we'll, do a little commentary after each and respond. If I think some people sort of asked for our takes about certain points they made, and so anyway. But yeah, shall we go into the match? Do you want to give us the match report, Kaan?
So just quickly gonna run down this match analysis or whatever you want to call it. It was actually going into this game, the lineup was pretty exciting. I thought it was a on paper good lineup, except for the fact that Tolga was playing, which really infuriated me. Supposedly Karius had some mysterious waist injury, but I'm not buying that. I think that's a load of crap. I think it's just, trying to cover for Channel, for Channel's erratic behavior. But basically the lineup, I just want to run this down so that people know that this definitely wasn't a bad lineup. So Tolga in goal, Pepe and Vida in the center of defense, Caner and Gökhan Gönül on the side back positions, Ricardo Quaresma on the wing, Ryan Babel on the wing, Laic behind the striker, Ozan and Atiba in the center of midfield, and then Güven Yalçın was the striker, and I think that's something we've been kind of hoping for weeks, that we give that kid a chance, and that's a perfect segue really to the match itself, because after just 11 minutes it was Güven Yalçın who opened the scoring on a Ricardo Quaresma assist, a diving header from Güven, putting Beşiktaş 1-0 ahead in the 11th minutes, and I think some people compared it to I think Mario Gomez's header against Fenerbahce a couple of years ago. But that didn't last very long. I mean, the stadium, of course, the fans were very happy in the stands that Güven scored, but only 3 minutes later, a clumsy, another one of those kind of a carambole situation where I don't know how, but it ended up in the back of the net, and that was in the 14th minute via David Braz, it says here, but I think it was counted as an own goal for who was it again? I think, was it Vida? No, I don't think it was Vida. I don't remember. I think it ultimately got counted as an own goal, but it says David Braz here on my thing. And then in the second half, in the 53rd minute, Emre Kılınç made it 1-2 to Sivasspor. And despite the fact that Beşiktaş had 40 minutes to do something, they didn't manage to get back into this game. The match ended 1-2 at full time, and so basically after 44 something unbeaten home games in the league, Beşiktaş have already lost twice now in just a couple of home opposition games. Yeah, to Antalyaspor, to Sivasspor, not high flyers or anything, and both games. I mean, I guess Antalyaspor was it kind of felt like a fluke because
it was early on. We had Tolga still, although fair enough, we had him again. Both losses.
Yeah, they had like 2.5 shots at goal in that game, and they scored 3 goals. But here, I don't know how to. You can't call it a fluke anymore after how disappointing we've been all season. I think there's a couple of talking points that we maybe want to talk about. I think the Quaresma Laic thing. Definitely worth to mention. I think.
Of course, I think we need to say a few words about Güven Yalçın, right? Like the budding talent that may be in our hands. Well, so quickly though, before we do any sort of in-depth analysis, I want to do a quick stat flash because it's telling again, and I think it speaks to a narrative here. 10 shots on goal to our 9. Sivas had the advantage. 3 on target to our 2. So we actually had 2 shots on target and 1 goal. They had 3 shots on target and 2. Imagine. Passes, we had 577 to their 326. Accuracy, Beşiktaş had an 81% accuracy, which, had a theme had been that was dipping, which had reflected the sort of lack of quality even, which was starting to develop. That picked up a little. Sivas' passing accuracy was 65%. Fouls were even at 14. Beşiktaş had 4 yellow cards to their 3. 4 offsides each. Corner 6-5. So there's not a telling narrative here as far as I think we can say that their lack of possession was by design, or they're playing a very counter-attack. Interestingly, they played much like Beşiktaş played against Genk. And Beşiktaş had looked fairly, I think a lot of people took hope from the way they'd played against Genk. Of course, you're not going to play defensively and on a counter against a side like Sivas. But what's telling again, I suppose, is that their passing wasn't good. So one can't really say that Sivas played a very solid game. And again, it's like the recurring theme that these stats seem to be showing is that really it's Beşiktaş shooting themselves in the foot. It's not, they're not being outclassed by superior opposition here. the Turkish league hasn't suddenly like increased in quality to the extent that, you know, we're just being outclassed by our opponents. It's really a case of our tactics not being aligned properly and our players not playing with the kind of heart and soul that's required for them to win these sort of matches, I would say. And I think the stats reflect that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Kaan?
Well, if you run down the stats like that, to me, that kind of reflects that maybe I do think that they outclassed us, but on a tactical
again, it reflects that counter-attacking defensive style. But that's been, I think we've said this before, and they did exactly what had been a fear weeks ago. But you know, they've started to press us high, right? Which is a tactic that if you've watched 3 or 4 matches against Abdullah Avcı, you'd realize that that's probably going to be a very effective tactic, right?
It's always been Sinel's weakness.
And it's just starting to be extended out. I mean, even European teams are starting to apply that to a great effect now. So it's not very hard to scout against.
It's just how many teams play against a better, supposedly better opponent. That's just, that's not just against us that they play like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it continues to be one of Sinel's biggest flaws as a coach, that he can't get his team to react to that. He doesn't seem to, but that, I mean, the problem I have with that is that there doesn't seem to be an answer tactically from Şenol Güneş in that regard.
Or even a response.
Yeah, I mean, what's the response he does? He makes substitutions. That's pretty much all he can really do. Of course, he can send in a player with some tactical instructions, and then at halftime he can try and do and stuff like that. But this has been an ongoing problem for as long as he's been at the helm of the club, and it's just recurring. So clearly, it's just something he doesn't know the answer to.
And maybe it's a personnel issue, right? Like, perhaps the correct response tactically is to stack the center of the midfield so you can hold the ball more and keep possession, But maybe we don't have the tools in his mind. But that shouldn't necessarily be the case, because he rotates. If there's any part of the field that he is rotating, it's the center of the midfield, right? Between Atiba, Adel, even Dorukhan's gotten. I guess now he's only gotten looks on the defense.
He did replace Atiba in this game.
Yeah, he did come in this time though. Yeah, and then Tolgay has been out of the rotation recently.
Dropped from the team.
I'm not going to criticize that.
Yeah, but then
Ozan, right? Like there is if there's rotation anywhere on the team, I guess it's really been there. And Tolgay was getting playing time until whatever happened occurred. And that's actually probably worth mentioning too, Kaan.
Yeah,
but before we do that, let's just finish up analyzing this match. Let's move to those talking points rather than doing a highlights and lowlights, because I think
I think we're gonna have to scratch highlights and lowlights and just make it a talking point segment, because this season there's very little highlights just to talk about. It's difficult.
And I think that's my first. That's my talking point. In fact, would be the highlight anyway. It's Guven Yalçın. We have a young kid who's showing pace, energy. If he doesn't start against Ankaragücü, that for me is unforgivable. That's all I'll say about that.
Unforgivable. I have nothing. I have nothing left to forgive. I'm totally done with this. I'm totally done with Şenol. I'm totally done with most of these. The team, the board, Şenol Güneş. It's just a big mess, and there's no redemption anymore. I think.
No.
I think it's impossible at this stage to redeem. I mean, for the coach at least. For Şenol, I think that kite has flown. There's no more redemption.
The ship has sailed. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
So what's your talking point? Before we move on to your talking point, do you have any thoughts on Guven?
Well, I think it's if you look at the situation that Beşiktaş are in right now, where the only options up front really are either playing Ryan Babel out of position, and otherwise Wagner Love, who's like 34, 35, who's not going to be at the club anymore past this season, who is not delivering regardless. And then there's Mustafa Pekdemek, who's out of contract at the end of the season too, who just isn't good enough. I don't think there's any point to playing anyone but Guven at this stage. The season is already lost after this defeat. there's no more regaining anything. If people are still thinking of a title, then just wake up. It's not going to happen.
We're 9 points out, 12 games into the season.
I mean, statistically, you're still not. Of course, you're not out, but it's not going to happen. You're 12 games into the season. You're into the league season. You're 20-something, 21 or 22 games into the season as a whole, and you have basically played one good game. That was an away game against Genk, which ended in a 1-1 draw.
Exactly.
Which
ended up, which was a total disaster, right? Like not letting in that late equalizer would put them second in their group in the Europa League, but because they let that equalizer in, they're in last place in the group now, and it's going to be an uphill battle for them to even get that really, incredibly important money that they could be gaining just from getting through the group stage. And any delusions of grandeur anyone has about like going far into the Europa League, you got to dispel that. Let it go, because frankly, like what we've seen in this group stage is the bottom of the barrel in terms of like the first team we'd see in the next round would probably take us out. I don't even want to imagine if it was like a Spanish team or something. Let's let go of any kind of ambitions in that regard. And I think in that regard, and to wrap up the segment on Guven Yalchin and hand it over to you, that I think suggests it's time to consider development over results, maybe. And that means putting in guys like Guven.
There are no results.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, by which I mean getting results in the league, right? You got to, instead of having ambitions for the title.
Kaan and Guven should be starting. It's already at that stage where, just play them now.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Maybe even, I guess Alpay Çelebi's out for a while now, but, like when he comes back in a few months, Fatih Aksoy is loaned out, I believe, right?
I think so. Not sure.
That's, but, Ozan Aydoğan, whoever wants to make a claim for a role, now is the time, is what I would suggest. But I don't know.
They need to start thinking about next season, so then you need to look at who's going to be here next season. Excuse me. I think that's...
getting emotional here, yeah.
Despite the fact... No, it was just... despite the fact that some people are saying, well, they are going to cost us so much, but I think Adem Laic is someone you're going to have to make either you're going to have to play him and start putting him in a central role, and that's going to tie into what I'm going to say next as well, or either just stop playing him and send him back in January and just, Same thing goes for Karius. If you're going to be benching him for Tolga, then... I don't want to talk about that because it just makes me so angry.
Yeah, I know. That's the type of thing that would take us over the boiling.
Makes me just want to start swearing and cussing a man that has done so much for the club, but...
Yeah. I think our guests do enough of that today. But why don't you... So you just mentioned Ljajic being in a more central role, and I think a moment in this last match occurred where that came into a sharp focus, perhaps, and the old clashed with the new, right?
It's a moment that happened that illustrates a lot of what's wrong with this team, and with Channel and with the team as a whole. Is there was a moment where there was a free kick, and basically Laic, who is somewhat of an expert, wanted to take the free kick, but both Caner and Quaresma basically just chewed him away. I think that's one of the... That just signals so much issues with the mentality of some of these players and what's wrong with the mentality. And Quaresma, the thing is, he always gives 100%. I think he's one of the few players that you can't really say that he's just phoning it in. He is giving 100% in these games, but he is having a very negative impact here. I think there's this clip floating around as well where you can see that he seemingly refuses to pass to Laic. I remember, I think it was like one of the first games, or the first game that Laic played against Malatyaspor. There was a couple of moments where Quaresma got the ball from Laic, cuts in, and Laic gets into a really good scoring position. And rather than just passing it to Laic, who will probably score a guaranteed goal almost, he decides to go for glory himself. And the thing is, of course, if you're going to put that in a video form, it looks like it's all deliberate. And the thing with Quaresma is, and I've often said this, is as soon as he gets in the box, he kind of loses sight of his teammates, and he's just too selfish in the box. That's not just with Lige. That's with all players, really.
Yeah,
that's one of the. I think one or two episodes ago. Yeah, exactly. 1 or 2 episodes ago, I even said like if he could keep calm in the box and square it to teammates more often, he'd probably be playing at a different level. But that's one of those things, I think you get a player like Lige, and it's something that's irritated me a lot with Şenol Güneş is he has this huge boner for hierarchy in a team. Remember
and
when
worse than hierarchy, it's like seniority, based in something very superficial, just like this guy's been here longer than that guy, or that guy's older than that guy.
I've heckled it for years. It's been a problem for ages. I mean, just that. Remember, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. When, let's say, when Mario Gomez came in, actually it was understandable. He wanted to prep him, and he did come in to the team as soon as he was 100% match fit. But there were some issues with Abubakar, with him and Cenk in the beginning.
Even
where
Negredo when he arrived.
Negredo for sure. That's a top example. Vida was a very big example of that as well.
You're absolutely right to say Cenk and Abubakar for sure. Yeah.
Boyko.
Yeah.
Fabi,
oh man. Yeah. I hope it's not the case with Karius now too. But...
Let's be honest. If Tolga didn't get injured, Karius would have had to wait in line. Yeah. That's how Şenol works. Yeah. And that's BS.
It really is.
Any coach who is in a situation where there's clearly this missing pawn in his team and he gets that player on the deadline day, that player plays the 2 days later. That happens so often. Look in the Premier League, look in other leagues. And for Şenol Güneş, apparently it has to take a couple of weeks. They have to ease in and they have to apparently earn their stripes or something. But then it's not just that. It's like, yes, Lige gets to play, but and this happened to Lens too. It's just like, yeah, you're playing, but you're kind of sending these messages of, you're playing, but... Well, I mean, what's the point of getting a number 10 that's kind, at Torino, he took set pieces, If we would have, like, a specialist, like, say, Talisca, But even Talisca, remember very often that Quaresma took free kicks instead of Talisca, which was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And he even scored at beauty against Dynamo Kiev, but it's not because he scores once in a blue moon that he should be taking free kicks over an expert. Mm-hmm. And, Adam Laic isn't a Talisca in terms of direct free kicks, but he's a more consistent free kick taker, to my knowledge, than Quaresma is. I'm not saying Quaresma is a bad free kick taker, but it's just a matter of, it's just so, why you're not allowing a player to settle into a team when you're going to be... It's basically a form of bullying.
It is. No, and it's actually something much worse in a way. And, it actually makes it... I was just having this thought. I was sort of daydreaming while you were talking, because I remember... I've lived in Japan. I've worked with Japanese people from almost most of my life at this point. It's just kind of crazy to think about, but, tutoring them and helping them out. And I've learned a lot about their culture. And one of the biggest hurdles they have, particularly in big companies, is that top talent doesn't rise. And it's because they have this cultural, it's called Jukyo, and I think it comes from Confucianism, but it's incredibly hierarchical and incredibly based on age and seniority. And so you often have at the top of major companies or big departments within companies, these like 70, 80-year-old guys who are literally senile, like sleeping at their desk for 90% of the time in top positions, and young people who are like going to top schools around the world, whenever, for the first time in the country's history, and coming back unable to get their ideas into the board meetings and stuff like that because the guy who's in charge of that department is literally sleeping at the wheel most of the time. And I think it illustrates the danger of doing things based on age, right? Like, obviously there's value in tradition and there's value in wisdom, and there's a system in place with our team and they're developing it and they want guys who are familiar with that system. But at the end of the day, this is football. And like, if you have a genius, a creative genius, you bring them in you want them to be free to express that creativity and that genius. And if you're not passing them the ball, if you have this pecking order thing, if you're hesitating to give them the opportunities to take shots, to take free kicks, you're stalling evolution, you're stalling progress in the name of some thing, right? And like, it's literally destroying Japan right now. Like, they're having huge social issues as a product of it. And I mean, that sounds dramatic, but like, if you speak to people in the Japanese business world, it's becoming a huge issue with their population even, because people have no motivation to have kids because they're not advancing in life. I mean, it's deep, profound things that come from this one issue of promoting people, and they're, you know, based solely on age. And it's more than bullying, you know.
It's of course based on, you know, what have you done for Shinal Gunesh in the last couple of years, and Quaresma has been incredibly important. Yeah, and you know, it's very clear that, you know, we've talked about this before, but in the beginning when Quaresma came, Shinal Gunesh put him in his place. If he took a yellow card in the first half, he'd take him off at halftime and he'd show him who's boss. But slowly Quaresma has earned his trust, has earned his stripes with Shinal until up to the point now where Quaresma is probably the first name on the sheet, on, you know,
every week.
And yeah,
Guaranteed.
and he's become someone who I understand this. Shinal Gunesh relies on Quaresma, and I think on the pitch as well as off the pitch. I think he relies on Quaresma, I think, the most of any player on this team, more than Oğuzhan, more than Atiba, more than whoever. So in theory, Quaresma is really his captain, but for some reason he's not giving him the armband. I'm not saying he should give him the armband,
and I think that's
clearly
it's like what happened with Ljajic, right? It's his inability to be an effective leader.
Yeah, and the thing is that you can say, well, you know, that's just Quaresma being, that's just Quaresma or Janner being a dick on the pitch. But no, because Shinal Gunesh is the man in charge.
He's the manager, literally, right?
Yeah.
Like in a company, you have a manager who has to mediate.
It's like when a player, let's say you decide that, for example, Wagner Love takes the penalties. That's what's decided on training. That's what's decided before the game. He's going to take the penalty. And Oğuzhan takes the ball away and decides to shoot, and he misses. Then it's up to the coach to discipline him. For sure. You know? And that's here too. And Quaresma, I'm not saying that Ljajic was supposed to take that free kick, because he probably wasn't, and that's the problem. That's the problem there. I don't think that anyone got reprimanded for that.
And it's not like
probably Ljajic will get reprimanded. He probably won't start the next game or
and
something.
It's not like
that.
Quaresma has this like shining record this season. You know, if we're going by like what have you done for me lately, Quaresma hasn't done too much with those free kicks. So I'm not sure why.
Well, statistically, he's got, I think, 13 assists and 2 goals this season, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. And he's been very effective with his crossing. But I just mean on those shots, on those direct shots.
But yeah, and the issue is just that, you know, you bring in a player like that, like Ljajic, and you know kind of he's an enfant terrible. So what's the most important thing is you need to make him feel at home. Yeah. You need to make him feel appreciated. You need to make him feel important. If you want to get the maximum out of a player like that, that's so important. And how is Shinal Gunesh doing that? He's not even starting him half of the time.
Interesting.
I said this before. He fucked up with Lens. He dropped the ball with Lens. He completely made him feel like he was a third string choice from the get-go. Yeah. And the entire summer we've been saying we need a number 10, we need a number 10, we need a number 10, we need a number 10, and then we get a number 10, and he makes him feel like he's just
you're not that number 10. You know,
you're not central to my plans. It's BS.
A visionary. Like Ljajic is a very creative number 10 who needs to be given the strings. You know, it's the reason I mentioned the whole Japan thing, and the reason I'm talking about this sort of seniority and the superficiality of it is that really is, as you said, it stems from the kind of philosophy of the club and the organization, and it's something that, you know, we've both opined over, like Jurgen Klopp. But what makes him so effective, using this word again, he's a visionary, right? He has a view of a team and a unit and a system that supersedes all of these, he's been here X amount of days and he's played this many years.
Plus
and
he's a
got on
problem
his national
solver.
team and he's only played for a youth, whatever. He's not considering those things. He's literally looking at, this is what he does. He runs this fast. He passes the ball that accurately. He can fill in that role. He can be physical in this way. And therefore he plays in this role and I'll try it out. And he shows the flexibility and the freedom of mind to, effectively do the things that you need to especially in the scenario that we're in now, where we're kind of in the middle of an epic shift. We're moving to the next phase where we need someone willing to make changes and to sort of phase out from the current crop of guys who we've been relying on for the last few years into whatever comes next. And clearly, because we don't really know what's coming next, because we haven't made the moves necessary, but the moves that we have made, like guys like Karius, Ljajic, at the very least, I mean, even I guess Guven Yalchin, since he's even shown some ability, or Dorukhan, clearly you have to, if there's anything about the future we do know, it's that they're likely going to be a part of it. And as such, you got to make that move. You got to show that commitment. If this season's a lost season, since we are 9 points out, 12 games in, now is the time. I mean, yesterday was the time. 3 weeks ago was the time. But you've got to, since we were failing at whatever it was we were trying to do, and if you need to make some big change, you might as well make that change that you need to make going forward anyway, developmentally. And it's very frustrating to see guys like Wagner Love try it out every week. Even, I dare say, Quaresma, when you've got guys like Babel and Lenz who are clearly in better form all season, contributing. It's a very frustrating time to be alive. Do you have any more points about this match, Kaan, or shall we channel the frustration we've just built into our guests? What do you?
Well, just one more thing I want to say is, many people blame the board, and they definitely share their part of the blame, but many people blame the board and they act as if Shinel has no blame. And I think that's a big mistake, because yes, you can say he didn't get the exact players he wanted and all that kind of stuff, but if you then look at his ineptitude to make something work with great players like Lenz, like Ljajic, then yeah, I mean, come on. If you can't get something out of those guys, or more than what you already have gotten, and it's like I said, a guy like Ljajic, bring him in to be a central player in your team, and you basically shove him off on the side, basically. And yeah, he's had a little injury and all that kind of stuff, but that's even before that. He wasn't making him important, and it's not. And I get that if the team is doing really well and you don't want to change a winning team. I get that, but this isn't a winning team. This is a bunch of losers, and the coach is a loser. He's acting like a loser, and that's the last I'm gonna say. He has to go. I'm done with it.
Fully in agreement. And there's something, like, as far as guys getting little injuries here and there, there's something to be said for a club excitedly, sort of scrambling to get a guy back into the lineup. You know what I mean? Like, I think when you're coming back from an injury, you want it to be a scenario like, oh my God, like the clock is ticking. Do you think we can get him in, right? Like Ljajic is the type of guy who wants to be seen as such an important cog that it's not like, oh, it's he's not quite match fit. Like, whatever, we'll just throw in someone else. We'll just, I feel like you've got to prioritize getting a guy like him back on the pitch, and for that not to have been happening can't help. And then him being diminished by his own teammates on the pitch, that doesn't help. Like,
yeah. To me, it's already kind of like, well,
what do you do now?
Don't see much good coming from this.
Yeah. I mean, all right, so let's hand it over, because, like, as far as what we think, it's been made fairly clear for a few episodes as far as what we think needs to happen. I think both of us are pretty much fully on team, like, let's light this whole thing on fire and burn it to the ground and then rebuild from there. But to be a little dramatic about it, come on, that's our job, right? We're pundits.
There's no money to do that, I think.
No, there isn't. I mean, but okay, before we pass on, this is one thing to consider. Now, how do we get money? Do we do we outright just sell everyone? Is that, do we just say like fire sale, like backyard sale?
There's nothing really to sell. There's nothing. We don't have all that. We the players that are worth a lot of money we've sold over the past couple of years already. There is, okay, we still have Vida and such, but like Vida is one of those players that you can still go forward with. Ozan at this point, I don't think you're going to get good money for him the way he's been playing the last 2 years, and he's only 26. And I want to see Ozan under a different coach.
Yeah.
Before we decide to sell him, especially given the fact that he's got a new 4 or 5 year contract. I don't want to sell him for scraps.
Why do players always go down right after they sign these? Okay, whatever. Yeah. But anyway.
And that maybe was something worth mentioning now with this rumor that came out today, Sinan?
Yes. So as far as strikers go, yeah, gosh, we have too much. That's the one problem of putting off this episode is we have so much to talk about. But yeah, there is a rumor. Chicharito, so this is the second Mexican rumor of the year for us on this podcast, right? Because we had Marco Fabian at one point, but yes,
and none of them are excited.
You're not too into it, right? And again, like talking about an out and out striker, he's more of a little guy, more of a central forward, perhaps, right?
Yeah, I mean he's 173, 175 or something. He's a very good poacher. That's what he is. Type of. I guess you could. I wouldn't compare him really with Inzaghi because Inzaghi is more like what Nobre was. Like,
oh God.
Really, it's different. Hole.
No,
but
I
but
see him as a guy who plays much in the role of Love, probably at a higher clip. You'd think, at a higher level.
I think he has the same issues. I think he has not so great first touch, that not great passing ability, not really that great hold-up play. He's just really good if you can send him down the channel and put him one-on-one with the goalkeeper. He's a great finisher.
He might still
makes
have
good
more
runs.
pace than Love has left in the tank, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's like 29, 30 years old. So in that regard, for sure. But I think that the issue as well is when we got Love, I think we all kind of thought, well, this might work in combination with Negredo, but I don't think we ever thought that, well, he's going to be our lone striker, and that's the exact same issue here. Last summer when we were linked with Chicharito, I was kind of like, this could work in combination with Negredo, but he's not going to work. He's not going to work as a lone striker, and that's the problem. I mean, if that's your big solution to all what's wrong with the team right now is getting Chicharito as your striker to provide you goals, and knowing Channel, who will still be here because he's not going to get fired, he'll be playing 4-2-3-1, and Chicharito is going to be isolated as fuck. He's going to score 1 goal in 17 games, and we're going to be all like, oh, this guy is completely shit. Oh, it's all his fault.
Exactly. The next blame game, the next finger point.
The next game's coach.
Just to elaborate on the rumor, Umut Güner is supposedly in London. There were pictures actually of Fikret Orman and Şenol Güneş in London too, early in the international break. So I think that's clearly what's sort of stemming the rumor. Obviously, West Ham
I hope
is in London. And so, I was going to say, there's another London striker we've been more... what's the word I'm looking for? Irresponsibly linked, right? By probably more like the photo match type stuff. But where Giroud has been mentioned as an option for us now, he is obviously London-based. And we've actually mentioned previously that a player wouldn't necessarily have to be playing for a London team for the transaction to be happening in London, right? They could be playing anywhere in England. Or even, I guess, like Scotland, right? Remember there's Moraes or whatever it is?
Yeah, but again, the same issue really. Not what we need. We need a ball.
No, I know. I was more just showing off my geographical knowledge.
Yeah. No, for sure. Oh,
Scotland
wow.
is near England. You know, for a lot of Americans, that's
Yeah,
probably flashy. You know, and you never
Yeah,
know.
I was just gonna mock you a little bit for that. Like, Americans are great at geography, of course. You know, when people ask me, when Americans ask me where I'm from, I always say I'm from Belgium. That's in Europe. You know, I always add that because
You never. I can say this officially now that they're divorced, but my sister's ex-husband, he asked me. I had said that I speak Spanish, so I could do pretty well in South America, I guess, but probably not in Brazil. And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Because they speak Portuguese." He was like, "Wait, isn't Portugal's in?" He was like, "Portugal's in South America." And like, "Why do they speak Portuguese in Brazil?" And I was just like, "Oh my god!" Like, oh my god. What has my sister done? Anyway, but he's gone, so that's past. That's old news. Anyway, hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast. But yeah, Kaan, let's move things along. Let's be brisk about it, because we have a lot of guests here and a lot of interesting commentary. I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. There's a bunch.
Where shall we start?
Do you want me to? Yeah, shall we just go into it straight away? I mean, I think we've basically touched on... Oh no, there's one more thing we probably should talk about, and that's the whole tall guy being relegated to the reserves thing. And definitely something worrisome, because according to reports, that is because he complained to UEFA that he hasn't been receiving his wages for the past 5 months.
Which is a recurring theme.
And there's been these types of reports for a couple of weeks already that the basketball team refused to train like 2 weeks ago because they hadn't gotten paid. And despite the fact that the basketball team and the football team they don't have the same books, so it's a different organization, so to speak. On the stock exchange, like the club, the football club is a different entity to the rest of the club. But that's still, that was already, to me, as soon as you start hearing stuff of basketball players aren't getting paid, then you need to start getting worried, because it was the same story before with Beşiktaş. It was the same story afterwards with Galatasaray several times, and that's here too. And that's one of those things that really worries me. You know, we're at a point now where we keep saying we have to rebuild.
With what money?
But how are you going to rebuild if you can't even pay your current players?
Well, it really puts into focus the Dorukans and the Guvenialchins, right? There might be that kind of a rebuild.
And it also kind of really infuriates you a little bit that we missed out on some really good talents this summer, like what's his name? Kukçu from Feyenoord. I forgot his first name, but that's someone I definitely, because like he's like a Tumer type of player, really. I definitely would have liked to seen him. I still think we have a chance at signing him, but you know, those are maybe the types of guys we should be going after at this point. But that's also just depressing, because you just come into the realization that, well, you know, by the time those guys are up to the experience level and all that stuff to compete, you're 2-3 years down the road. So what are we gonna do? You know, sit on like the club right now. Like, you know, we're Beşiktaş fans. We're used to going without titles for larger points of time. But looking purely at the club financially, I don't think Beşiktaş can afford not to have success for multiple years.
We talked about the importance of getting back to the Champions League, remember?
I think Beşiktaş realistically has to win the title every other year to get back up on their feet financially, because people seem to have this impression that Beşiktaş were a financial powerhouse because we've been making a lot of money the last couple of years, but we still have a huge pit of debt to fill that was nowhere near filled yet. And that maybe then in turn ties into all these banners and the slogan and fans asking, where's the money? You know, where's the Cenk Tosun money and all that kind of stuff. And it
goes to the debt. That's where it is. It's gone into the hole. I mean, honestly, I think Yildirim Demidoren is the bulk of the reason.
Yeah, and people say, well, you know what, Fikret Orman's been at the club for 6.5 years. At this point, it's his fault, but that's bullshit.
No, and he's got a difficult task because he's tasked with not only putting money back in the coffers to pay off the debt, but also to keep developing the club and spending to put a good team out there. So it's not been an easy task for him, you know, for all of the criticism we've had.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to be an apologist either. I mean, I'm not saying that he's doing a great job right now, because the board isn't doing a great job right now, and they're making mistakes, and they're not making it any better at the moment. But
I've said this before. We were on the cusp of building a dynasty.
Yeah.
And if you look at where our opposition is today, we should be there. All we needed to do was make a few key transitional moves, bringing in sort of younger talent that we could move into positions.
Yeah.
You know, younger talent that we could be developing into better talent, so they could now be at a level where they'd be coming into the rotation and contributing immediately. And instead, we got caught up in getting older, flashy.
Yeah, but we also
we thought we were filling out. I think we thought we were filling out a complete unit rather than developing something to move forward.
But we had a lot of circumstantial problems that I think a lot of clubs wouldn't be running into, like the fact that we couldn't keep Mario Gomez, which would have been an amazing deal for us, you know, signing him basically for free. You know, the fact that whole coup the whole coup had to happen then. If it would have happened like 2 months later, then Mario Gomez would have been tied to the club, and maybe he wouldn't have been happy given the situation, but he would have realized that, you know, things calmed down. You know, no players' lives got any worse because of what happened then. But I understand that his family and his wife, his then fiance, now wife, and now mother of his child, at the time they didn't want to stay in Turkey because of the political unrest. I get that. But that's something where we got really messed us up. Then we had to go and we had to go for Vincent Aboubakar, and we got a good deal for him.
And then we couldn't do that.
Reflecting.
And then Talisca. Don't forget Talisca.
Yeah,
but even when Talisca didn't pan out as a player who would stay with us long term, then the whole thing where we couldn't get any money off of him either. You know, like
But
we've had some misfortune.
Yeah, but
sure.
With the Talisca thing, I think that was a bad deal from the start. I mean, 25 million was not realistic for us given our financial fair play constraints. I mean, I even said back in the day, and unfortunately we didn't have the podcast back then, but I even said back then 10 million for Aboubakar was going to be very difficult for us to do. That's going to be almost impossible. And the reason I say that is because look at the pudding. You know, the proof is in the pudding. Beşiktaş have never paid more than 8 million for a single player. So as soon as you start loaning a player with a 10 or more million buyout clause, the chances of us really actually signing him are not huge, you know. And plus we got unlucky there because our financial fair play settlement was supposed to end that summer, so we were supposed to be able to fork out that 10 million, but then it got extended by an additional year, and we weren't able to make that financial commitment to Aboubakar. Then he ended up exploding at Porto, and now he's worth 25 or more. You know, so we were unlucky there. Sosa, you can say that was unlucky, although I think we got a really good deal there with 7.5 million for him, 32 years old.
I was going to say Sosa, and then I had that thought like before I said it.
But there has been a lot of, you know, unfortunate events in that regard. So I definitely don't think it's only the board's fault, but, you know, I mean,
a lot of those other circumstances are circumstances that our opposition had to deal with too.
But
right?
as far
as the economy and
for sure.
All that.
And for sure the Turkish economy is playing a huge part in Beşiktaş not being able to pay wages right now. I don't think we would be in this situation if it weren't for the Turkish economy right now.
We might have to do a follow-up with John Oka.
Yeah. And
people,
end of the year. And you know, I'm pretty sure that people are gonna say, well, you know what, that's not an excuse, but it kind of really is. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, just the dip that if you look at look at Galatasaray, look at Fenerbahce, how bad they're doing right now.
This would be a prime opportunity for that dynasty. You know, that's the saddest point for me, honestly, is that despite all the other things, like if we had just brought in some talent that could have been developed and that could be sort of blooming now, you know, over the last few years. And I think you're right. Like, it was mitigating circumstances that may have prevented it, you know. But nonetheless, if maybe if things had gotten better, and and if we just had that striker and we could have focused our windows on more luxury things like getting in young talent to develop, that's literally I think all it would have taken, right? Because like now they could be coming in, replacing some of the guys who've been underperforming, maybe even motivating them to step it up, right?
Or allowing them,
squad competition is always good
in
that regard, right? But squad competition is always good in terms of pushing guys to perform better, and so having that depth.
The squad competition is great if you have a manager that utilizes it, but we don't. We have a manager that will always play his favorites over whatever. We saw it with Lens, and I'm not gonna say we're seeing it with Lige because Lige doesn't really have a competitor at 10, but still somehow he's not managed to start. Yeah.
Let's pass it on.
Yes. Let's do that indeed.
So who's first, Kaan? Okay.
So the first one of our guests is Danny Pearce, and he's a longtime Beşiktaş fan, but he'll shortly introduce himself as well. So Danny's
has been on and After the Beat previously.
Yeah, he has. So Danny's going to be the first one.
Hi, my name is Danny Pearce. I'm from England, as you very well know. Lived in Turkey for 12 years. Been supporting Beşiktaş since 1989, since my friend Alan Walsh played for the club. Who's to blame? Don't think you were ever going to find that out. That's down to the board and the coach. Only they'll know the answer to that. Did the board give the coach money? If the board hasn't given the coach money, then what's the coach supposed to do? All he can do then is try to educate and teach players that he's got at his disposal. Are the players to blame? No. If they're not good enough, they're not good enough. You can only coach someone to the best of your ability. At the end of the day, if they're not good enough, they're not good enough. And currently, our strikers, not just the Beşiktaş, I have the same problem at Bristol City. We do not have a striker, not one that's even going to get you 15 to 20 goals a season. And any football club at any level, whether it's junior, semi-professional, amateur or professional, you need two strikers that are going to get you 15 to 20 goals a season. Otherwise, you can play the best football in the world, possession-wise, slick, passing, look nice. But at the end of the day, if you've got no finishing, you've got no finishing. You're not going to win games of football. It's quite simple. What can be done now? Well, there's only one answer to that. Nothing. Until the January transfer window opens. Basically, all I'd say is I support Beşiktaş, and I think people really need to realise this, that I'm disabled and a lot of pain, and I travel all over Europe whenever I can to watch Beşiktaş, and win or lose. And I've seen some really bad displays, like in Linz, but I still pay a lot of money to go there. Slagging the club down, bad mouthing the players, booing them, whistling them, jeering them. That's hardly likely to install any confidence in the players, is it? That's just going to wreck their confidence and make them even worse. As a true fan of any sporting club, whether it's football, gymnastics or basketball or even in New York Knicks, and they need some support, and you've got to as a true fan, you've got to support them through thick and thin, whether they're losing, whether they're winning, or you can't just support a team just because they're winning. You've got to support a team full stop. You got to make your mind up whether you're a fan or whether you're only a fan when the club's winning. I'll always follow Beşiktaş until I die, and at the end of the day, win, lose or draw, it's not good at the moment. But like I said, if you've got, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. If you've got strikers that are employed to score goals and they're not good enough, then what do you do? I've trained people all over the world in cells, but you can only train people, like I said, that want to be trained or want to learn. If they don't, you're in a bit of a predicament. And at the moment, like I said, Bristol City and Beşiktaş, we have exactly the same problem. We're playing good football, but we haven't got no strikers at either club. And unfortunately, like I said, that can't change till January now. So be positive, keep with it, keep with the club. Don't jeer them. Don't badmouth them. They need every help they can get now. And if we're fans, we have to stand united. We have to stand behind the club. And we have to support this club through thick and thin. I'd rather be a Beşiktaş fan at the moment than a Fenerbahce one. That's perfectly sure. How do you think they feel? But at the end of the day, like I said, you can all make your minds up. But a true Beşiktaş fan will always be a Beşiktaş fan, and they'll always follow the club. God bless you. İyi günler. Haydi görüşürüz.
So that was Danny, and he was, I think, very apologetic, and I couldn't disagree more with what he's saying, and I get where he's coming from, and I think that, you know, he's comparing Bristol to Beşiktaş, and with all due respect, I think the situations of the clubs are very different. I think that when you're supporting a smaller club, a local club, there is that responsibility you have as a fan, that you have to keep.
I need to step in there, and in the vein of that, you know, in terms of maybe a poor comparison, he also mentioned the Knicks, which, you know, and I didn't realize he was a dig until he actually told me so on Twitter, like, because he was like sports teams, and I guess the Knicks, like, as if maybe but even then, and the difference there, and I'll tell you what, the Knicks fans are merciless. They're the best fans in the world in terms of the fact that the Madison Square Garden remains sold out day in, day out, despite the team being putrid for 15 plus years. But they are very loud when things don't go well. When the Knicks go down, even when they're not supposed to be a good team, like this is a development year for them. And another reason it's not a good comparison also is that in basketball, a development year means losing almost intentionally so that you can get a good draft pick. There's no draft in football. When Beşiktaş loses this year, there's no silver lining at the end of it. There's no like, oh, but at least we got, you know, there's nothing like that. But secondly, the Knicks fans are notoriously loyal, but also notoriously loud when things are not going well. And I actually don't necessarily agree that being booed is a negative thing for a player.
I think it's a responsibility of the fans.
And oftentimes it makes the guys who really want to be with that club, who don't want to be booed by that crowd, who want to be able to come back to the stadium the next day and be able to lift their heads up and play the game professionally and get at the very least paid for it. It motivates them often. It motivates them to say, okay, it's like, okay, I realize now that like we're dogging it to some extent, and now it's pissing everyone off to the extent that now like you see effort go up, you see motivation. I mean, I definitely, I don't agree.
Yeah,
in that regard.
But enough about the Knicks now, because I think we lost half of our listeners.
Yeah, right. No, but just in general, though, you know, I mean, booing has a role.
Yeah, but it's a responsibility of the fans, especially of big clubs, to push not just the players, but also the board and the coaching staff, and to let them know when they're not happy about something. And you know what? For example, what happened against Genk. I think that was appropriate. If that would have been our first bad game of the season, that would be completely uncalled for. But we haven't played a single good game all season, except for the away game in Genk, arguably. So that was an accumulation of people losing their patience. And I don't agree with, you know, like Galatasaray fans, for example. They start whinging at the at the slightest sign of not going the way they want, you know, and they start booing and all that. And I don't believe in booing your team at the slightest sign of trouble, but we've hammered this home. It's been 18 or so months already of this team slowly slipping and going downhill. And at some point, fans need to stop pampering and need to stop being patient.
They have to make it clear that they're not on board with what they're seeing.
Still, every game we hear a large portion of the crowd sing "Şenol Güneş, Şenol Güneş."
I was gonna say,
and I'm sorry.
My problem with the way that we're booing is that it's inconsistent. We're singling out like Ozan, for example, and you know I'm not gonna I'm not gonna die on the hill of defending him. He's been poor. He's been terrible this season, but. He's by no means the only one. How can you be cheering Quaresma on one hand and booing Ozan when Quaresma's been dogging it at least as much. He's featured more and been dogging it more consistently. So I don't, I think you've got to boo the whole team.
Individuals, you need to. They need to stop. I've said this also on a previous podcast that there's a portion of our fans seem to have this stupid idea that we're better than Fenerbahce and Galatasaray fans. We don't just boo or we don't ask for resignations. But it's been long enough.
So does that mean that if you stick at Orman, you'll let him spit in your face? Like how far does that? Well,
extend? A large portion of our fans are asking irrational questions like, where has the money gone? But the answer is really quite simple. And people are just blind. I don't know what they think. There's this big fleshy, we got 23 million or 22 million for Cenk, and now we have money. But no, we don't really, because the club is still in such bad financial shape.
Perhaps had we made the Champions League, this could be a different conversation.
And we didn't qualify for the Champions League. Anyway, but what Danny said, I think that Danny definitely is representing, I think, still a large portion of our fans. I think, and sorry, Danny, if you're listening to this, I think a large portion of our fans, kind of like you, are kind of sticking your head in the sand a little bit and thinking that will weather the storm. But I think it's too late for that. I think drastic measures need to be taken. I don't believe there's any point in supporting Şenol Güneş anymore at this point, because let's put it this way. Do you really want him to be at the helm of the club still next season?
Yeah.
He's had more than a year to turn things around, and things have only gotten worse. And yeah, he hasn't gotten the players he wanted necessarily all the time, but let's go back to the 2002-2003 season. We didn't have a single player who scored more than 11 goals, but we played great football and we won the league dominantly with 85 points, 7 or 8 points more than 8 points more than Galatasaray, with 77 points, which is a lot. Yeah. And we had 85 points. We only lost one game. You don't need a striker to score 20 goals. If your team plays great football, other players are going to score. And you say we're playing good, but we're playing terrible.
Exactly. It's not like anyone else is scoring.
I think that's the problem, that we're playing terrible. And our strikers aren't even getting scoring opportunities. It's not like they're missing 5 chances a game. They're just not getting scoring opportunities. And that's partially their own fault, but it's also the issue of the team just not clicking, not playing together.
And it's tactical, right? You've got to say that to some extent.
Yeah, as a team, we are completely incapable of breaking down our opposition. So please don't tell me we're playing good football, because we're playing terrible football. I'm gonna say this. I have not enjoyed watching Beşiktaş any less than I have this season in my entire life. And that's 20 plus years of watching Beşiktaş. I if it wasn't for the podcast and it wasn't for all that, and I would not watch. I genuinely wouldn't, and that's the first time in my life I've said that. And you can say, well, we're not having the worst season of our existence. No, but we're not. I think the least thing that a fan can expect. You can lose games, but what you want to see as a fan, you always want to see determination. You want to see heart, and you want to see soul from your players and from your team, from your coaching staff, from top to bottom. And we're not seeing that.
And that's the manager's job at a company, at a team, anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll moderate your point. I'll moderate it for the sake of diplomacy. No, but honestly, like I would never slag loyalty, on its face. Loyalty is a fine thing, and I think I consider myself a very loyal person too. I'm very appreciative of what Fikret Orman has done in terms of turning around our club's ethos and starting to pay off our debts. I'm very thankful to Şenol Güneş for bringing us 2 titles, for instilling a fighting spirit, for building that unit strong. The foundation of it had been set before he arrived, I think, but he really put it together. He was the sort of missing piece, I think. Thank you so much. But loyalty, like everything, needs moderation. It has to exist with limits. And like, for example, I'm the most loyal husband in the world, but if my wife cheats on me, for example, that's where that ends, right? Like everyone has a breaking point for their loyalty. And I think there's a certain time where you have to say, like, you can be loyal to Beşiktaş always, because Beşiktaş is an
Yeah.
inanimate object that does not make decisions, right? It's an entity. But Fikret Orman is an individual. Şenol Güneş is an individual.
Yeah.
And these guys,
They're
at a
not-
certain point,
yeah.
they merit loyalty, just like your wife or your friend, or your girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever.
Your dog.
Your pets, absolutely. But they can also lose that, like that. It has to be merited, and you at a certain point, like that. It's a theme, right? The toxic people, right? There are people that can be toxic, and who at a certain point, that loyalty runs thin, wears thin, and it's no longer merited, and you have to, for your own well-being, be able to sort of recognize when that's happening and cut cords. And that very much applies to Fikret Orman and Şenol Güneş right now. They're stuck. They were great in the role they played, but now we're in another phase of our club's existence, and so we need someone who's great for this phase.
We need to realize that if we are going to stick with Şenol Güneş for another year, for example, it's just going to be another throwaway year. And we have to ask ourselves the question, can we afford to be loyal to him because of what he's done for the club?
Can the club survive that? Can the club survive another middling year?
Yeah, can the club survive that? And can we... Is it worth sacrificing the potential future of the club just for blind loyalty? Blind loyalty is never good. And it doesn't mean you're a bad supporter or a bad fan. I think caring is the biggest, the most important responsibility of a supporter of a football club or whatever. I think the most important thing is caring about the club. I think, and I say to myself, I said earlier, like, I wouldn't be watching, but I know that that's bullshit, because my girlfriend says to me constantly, like, why do you put yourself through it? Why do you do that?
That's good.
Yeah. And she's known me. I mean, she's known me through these couple of great years that we've had now. But I've been together with her since 2012, when we, and around that time, things weren't so great with Beşiktaş. And I have this. A lot of Beşiktaş fans have this too. Despite the fact that you're probably gonna be watching something that's gonna, like this saying that Beşiktaş fans have, like, Beşiktaş gives us cancer, but we still watch. That's a saying among Beşiktaş fans, that Beşiktaş gives us cancer, and right now it's giving us a lot of fucking cancer.
Stuff.
Anyway,
let's move on to the next one.
Let's move on to the next one, because otherwise we'll be here tomorrow still. The next one is Kartal Oğur, alongside his brother Özcan, who also sent in I believe after the beep submission last week.
Yeah.
Kaan, Sinan, and all the listeners of the Black Eagles podcast. Today we're back for some more #Twin Talk. Today we're going to talk about what we think is the cause for our team's recent struggles. Özcan, do you want to start us off, bro?
I think it started last year, all the signings of Pepe, Negredo and Vida, kind of them getting higher wages and everyone else. Like before, you'd have like everyone would be on kind of between like 1 to 2 million. Then your strikers like your Gomez, your Abu Bakar, they'd get about 3 million each. But I think them getting like Pepe and Negredo, for example, getting like about 4.5 million euros each. Then Vida coming in as a centre back getting 3.3. Kind of ruined the wage balance in the team. Unsettled some players. Like you saw it in the off season, like Babel demanded 4 million to sign a new contract. Like that's natural for him to think that. You think Negredo just scored 7 league goals last season, whereas I scored about 12. I'm playing in the wing and he's a striker and he's getting 4.5 million. I'm on, I think Babel's on like 2.2 or something like that. So that's normal for him to think that. But I think not just Babel, that's probably unsettled the whole team. Like you'll hear like reporters talking about we've not got that old family atmosphere that we had in the Bilic era, the early Şenol Güneş era, like the start of the Şenol Güneş era. Like that kind of family atmosphere is non-existent anymore. There's a lot of like distance in the team. Everyone's not so friendly with each other anymore, they say. I think that's affected the way the team plays on the pitch. Now they're saying that we're struggling to. There's rumours about us struggling to pay players' wages and stuff like that, and obviously that's going to affect things as well. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, we still get a decent team minus a striker. But Şenol Güneş has not been able to get performance out of them. It seems like we don't have a game plan. So even I think the board are the main problem. But I think considering that the board aren't going to go, like I think Şenol Güneş has to get sacked. Like that hurts me saying that because I love Şenol Güneş. He's brought me like some of the best memories I have of being a Beşiktaş fan in the last 3.5 years almost. But I think he's not able to get that team playing the way they used to. So we need a change. What do you think, Carthan?
I agree with everything you said there, bro. And another reason why I feel as if it is the board's fault mainly is the fact that so many players that are part of the concrete system, Şenol Güneş's system, have not been replaced. And the greatest example of all is obviously Mario Gomez Garcia, who came in and scored 26 goals for us in the league in 15-16. We couldn't hold on to him. And after that, we replaced him with Abu Bakar, who was also great. Maybe didn't score as much goals, but it was great. Couldn't hold on to him either. And last year we ended up with Negredo, who, let's be honest, is a bit of a flop. And now this year we don't have a decent striker at all. Hopefully Guðmundsson looks good. Hopefully he continues to play as well as he did in the weekend there. He's the only bright light of the team. That's just one example of we've not been able to maintain a striker. And another one is obviously the centre back. When we sold Marcelo, we didn't adequately replace him. We signed Pepe and Vida, but they're the kind of hard centre backs. They're not the type of centre back Marcelo is, who's got that kind of technical flair and can pass out the ball. That's one thing we've lacked, and the board's not kind of seen that and replaced him adequately. But I also feel, like as Jan said, we've got a good enough team on paper. We should not be, we're 7th or something in the league just now. We're 9 points behind. We should not be in that situation. We should be near the top still. We've got a decent team on paper, minus a good striker, you could say. And I feel as if it's time. It's time we get some new blood in the team. And I feel as if that is the best way to go forward, considering that Fikret Orman's not going to leave anytime soon, I don't think. So anyway, thanks guys for having us on again. I hope this is a common occurrence. And hashtag Twin Talk could, who knows, it'll maybe take over soon. Right, cheers guys.
Hashtag Twin Talk sure, guys. It. Thank you so much.
It's like Kaan was saying. It's like we have Alex Ferguson on our show with those accents, those Glaswegian. Loving it.
Amazing. Yeah. But no, they bring up a couple of really good points, like the wage balance in the team. That's clearly there's a problem. I think it was, when we look at things coming from the Feta season, I think it was natural as the club progressed and the club's budget was increased and the new stadium was built, all that stuff. We were operating on a very small budget for a couple of years there. So I think it's not more than normal that we increased the wage budget as years have gone on. I don't think it's abnormal that players are making a certain amount of money.
And you have to also take into account there was a degree of enthusiasm coming off of all of those things because the stadium was built, because we were finding unprecedented success in Europe. There was definitely a sense, I think, within the club that we were building this thing that, perhaps, clearly it was perhaps in some ways a little quick.
The thing though, if you remember when we brought in the whole Portuguese posse, Simão, Almeida, Quaresma, and of course, Guti, the Spaniard, not a Portuguese, not the same thing. But when we brought in those guys, we went from paying our players like between 1.1 to 1.5. I think like our top paid players were like earning like 1.5 or something, for example. And then suddenly Quaresma came in. He was earning 3.75 million a year. Guti was making 2.5. I think Almeida was making 2.5. Simão was making 2.5. Ernst was making like 2.2. And we had a bunch of players with really high wages back then. And the difference is that back then we didn't have the success really. We didn't play Champions League regularly, all that kind of stuff. We didn't win back-to-back titles, stuff like that. So we were really paying a lot of money just in a way trying to stay competitive with our rivals and all that kind of stuff. The same issue that Trabzonspor have cost Trabzonspor their financial situation, I think. But now it's a little bit more warranted that we are increasing those wages. But of course, if you then look like, for example, like let's say Gökhan Gönül, Caner, they're making like 1.8 million a year. And then you see Pepe making 4.7 million a year. That's a massive difference. Of course, I do think that players also kind of need to be realistic and understand, look, this is Pepe we're talking about. And if you want to have a player like that on your squad, now, I'm not saying if it's responsible financially for us to have a player like that on our squad. I thought it was 2 years ago. I thought it was okay to have an exception like that. And I still think that if you're going to, I think that it's okay to make those types of exceptions for exceptional players like Pepe. I definitely don't think it was warranted for Negredo. He is not an exceptional player.
And
Mario Gomez
maybe
is
Negredo
exceptional.
like 5 years earlier.
Yeah. Not even. I wouldn't even say that. Negredo was never like an absolute world-class player in his position. He was never, for example, he was never top 5. I just mean
like, let's say he was coming right off of Manchester City rather than like Middlesbrough or whatever it was.
Yeah, but even then, if you look at Mario Gomez, he was literally one of the top 3-4 best number 9s in the world. And Pepe, to this day, you could argue is one of the best center backs in the world. That you make an exception for those types of players, that's understandable. I think also that you can kind of expect a player like Babel to understand that. But really, when we look at status, Babel's status in world football, in my opinion, isn't necessarily that much lower than Negredo. So I kind of understand if Babel would be like, well, you're paying this guy that much, why aren't you paying me that much, you know? But obviously a guy like Babel needs to understand, and I think we've also seen it in the videos that he seemingly understands that the club isn't in a financial position where
rumors circulating about what he demanded, we don't know how much of that was real. And I think we've spoken about this before, but perhaps even the club itself helped to generate some of this stuff to usher him out of the door.
Yeah.
You know?
I floated that idea that was all fabricated to kind of, you know. But I mean, it's possible that he's asking for 3-something million now, which is the rumor. Whereas Beşiktaş offered him, the rumor is Beşiktaş offered him an extension for 2 + 1 years at the same rate that he's earning now, which is like 2.2. And he's supposedly, according to that rumor, I think this is Haber 1903 reported, asking for 3 million. And it's perfectly possible that he's asking that.
Negotiating point, right?
You know, maybe he's asking that because he knows, you know what, I'm free this summer and I can go to Palmeiras or Flamengo or whatever,
Fiorentina, whoever,
or whatever, and they're gonna pay and they're gonna meet my price. So he's perfectly, you know, it's perfectly fine for him to ask that.
He can get paid by Beşiktaş then. You know, at least he can see options.
Yeah.
Which sucks,
I don't think we should pay him that for sure. But no, yeah, I think there's some good points that they raised. I think our wage, definitely given the current financial crisis in Turkey, our wages are an issue, no doubts. But fortunately, lots of expiring contracts, they're going to kind of clear themselves up a little bit.
A lot of the big ones especially.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to be competitive, you kind of have to take financial risks a little bit here and there. And unfortunately, Turkey is a place where if you don't pay a great salary, top players aren't going to come. You know, for example, Adem Laiç, who's making 2.25 a year, which is, I think that 2.5 should kind of be our maximum. Yeah. Like 2.2, 2.3 should be our top wages for our top players, and then you can have 1, maybe 2 exceptions if you get a really extraordinary player like Mario Gomez, like Pepe. You can have 1 or 2 exceptions, but you can't make those exceptions for Negredo because you're desperate. That's a mistake you can't make, because that, I think that when Mario Gomez was officially making 3.5, but with bonuses and all that for winning the league, he made like 6.5. But the thing is, I don't think anyone was complaining then because they understood this is a world class player. He came in, he scored 27 goals. You know, it's understandable. But then you have Negredo, who is from a different caliber. He's a good player, but he's a different caliber than Mario Gomez is. And then it's understandable that players start being all like, you know, what is this? Why is this guy getting this ridiculous type of money? I want my piece of the pie. And I think if you're paying Pepe a lot, players are going to understand. But there's a difference when you're paying Negredo that much. As for Domagoj Vida, I think you need to keep in mind that part of his wages
it was like
are
a transfer
kind of
fee, right?
He was free.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to keep, you know, and in a way of spreading the costs, instead of paying him a 5 million signing bonus or whatever, they just basically upped his wages by 800k or something over 4 or 5 years. Yeah. Basically, you just have to see it as that. He basically got a 4 or 5 million signing bonus, and he's earning 2.5 a year. You can look at it like that too. Yeah. The fact of the matter is that Domagoj Vida is market value when we signed him was roughly 10 to 12 million euros. Let's say he would still be under contract with Kiev, and we would have wanted him. We would have had to pay probably around 10 million for him. So, you know, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is with Ryan Babel, when we signed him, he was doing good at Deportivo, but he didn't have that market value anymore, a 10 million plus market value. He doesn't have it now either. Vida still does. I think that are we paying him too much for our financial means right now? Yeah, but is he not worth that money? I think he's worth that money. I think if Vida goes to the
sort of foundational part of our back line at this point, and I've heard him get criticized, but I think he has settled for the most part. I've seen good work from him.
For sure. Yeah, I think he's a solid defender. Anyway,
let's move on.
Let's move on to the next one. Guys, thanks a lot for your #Twin Talk. I hope to hear more from you again soon. Moving on to Emrah Dincer, who's got his opinion as well.
This is Emrah from Amsterdam. Well, the blame lies on everybody. In fact, like the management, the coaching, players, the fans, the media, hell, even UEFA. But when you come to think of it, the fish rots from the head. So I'd say the biggest piece of the pie, the biggest piece of the blame pie, I think falls on the management. They spent a lot of money on old or useless players, and even worse than that, even worse than buying players, they also gave them real large contracts, so they were impossible to move. And in the end, we have this quite old team that more than half needs replacing, and since they are old, they can't move. Our, for example, centre-back duo is like getting paid 10 million euros per year. This is a hell lot of luxury for a team in financial distress and is not playing in Champions League. So yeah, I say the management, the president.
So that was Emrah, and I think again he harpens back to the financial situation, and I think he makes a good point. I mean, we have a center pairing at the back that's making what 7.5, 8 million a year.
Yeah, too much now. But in their defense, and we just said this, they were building for that was supposed to be a Champions League pairing.
Yeah,
like that. We didn't
meet
on the field. The club didn't meet the goals that had been set, I would say. But perhaps you could put that on the board to some extent, because we've talked about that as well with the lack of striking options and etc. But
Beşiktaş is clearly not in a position right now where they can afford to pay that. That doesn't mean that those players aren't. Worth that money. But Emrah brings up a good point. I think there were. But when we look at big contracts paid for players that are useless or whatever, and we fill the move. I think Negredo is one of the big mistakes. Wagner Love is one of those big mistakes. Like if you look at age and for example, Gökhan Gönül, I don't think that was a mistake to sign him. I don't think signing Adriano was a mistake. I think we got a lot of joy out of Adriano in 2 years.
Was he a free signing?
Adriano cost us a very small transfer fee the first year, but because we managed to qualify for the Champions League, which was a clause in this contract, we ended up paying I think around 1.8 million or something for him. But that's pretty cheap, and I mean Adriano this season he's missed a lot of games due to injury, and I was kind of worried about that when we initially signed him that he was going to, because he was injury prone and he was known to be injury prone. But I think we've gotten 2 really good seasons out of him.
Absolutely.
His first season it was great. His second season was still good, definitely in the Champions League. So I can't say
on paper by bringing in Janer shortly thereafter, I think we brought in a good stopgap until we have that long-term solution there.
I think people criticize Janer a lot, but I think that
only people who weren't fully sentient during the Ismail Koybasha days.
People forget so quickly. And it's so easy to blame Janer for all our problems, but really, I mean, I still think that Janer is a good player. It doesn't mean he doesn't make mistakes, but
short of Quaresma, who's a better crosser on the team.
Yeah, but I speak to people a lot, and they talk about, for example, they have these rose-colored glasses when they're talking about Roberto Hilbert, but then those same people will hate on Janer every week, which I don't understand, because he makes, the goal came again over Janer's side. Oh, it's, defending is a team sport. I'm gonna say it again, and I think if Janer is up because he just joined the attack, then it's up to other players to fill that void.
And that's also probably by design too. So again, maybe that's Chanel. But let's keep going. We got a good roll on.
Let's keep going. Thanks a lot, Emrah, for your contribution. So up next is Salih Kalkavan, also from the Netherlands, and he's gonna have a very thick Dutch accent, so you're definitely gonna notice. While Emrah only moved there for the last couple of years, so he's actually from Turkey, so you might have noticed a difference there in accent. But here's Salih's contribution to the podcast.
So Kaan asked me to record some things about Beşiktaş. What am I not happy about? What I think are the reasons for us performing so bad. So here we go then. Well, first of all, I would like to start with the players. I hate them all because they don't fucking care about what the fuck they are doing on the pitch. Every one of them only play for themselves. I mean, Pepe's playing good and all, but why the fuck do you try to shoot from 40 meters? What's the point? When in your fucking life have you scored from 40 meters? Quaresma taking every free kick, every corner. I mean, there's a free kick there by our own goal, and you see that guy running from the right wing directly sprinting to our goal. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Also, Jacob, man, you're the captain of this team. Come on, man, you have to perform. You have to do something. I mean, if you can't even pass a ball from 5 meters, who should we expect to do that? Who else? Who else? Our fucking strikers. Incompetent fucks. Negredo, what the fuck? Why did you sell that guy? I mean, he wasn't performing that good, but why did you sell him? Now we have that incompetent fuck Love. I mean, I am ashamed to call him our top scorer. Then who else? Mustafa Pekdemir. I mean, okay, he plays because you don't have anyone better, but come on, he's so bad. This is the worst Beşiktaş I have seen in my life, and I have seen plenty of Beşiktaş. I have endured the 8-0 loss versus Liverpool, and we weren't even that bad then. I mean, there are some players who deserve props, like Medel or what do I know, Vida plays well lately. Gökhan Gönül, which I'm very impressed about. I wasn't happy about him being a starting right back, but he is doing well. But other than that, I mean, they're all shit. They deserve way too much money. They know they do not deserve that much money. Excuse me. Okay, second to blame, Şenol Güneş. I mean, bro, you had an incredible campaign in 15-16, an okay campaign in 16-17, but since last year, what the fuck, what is our system? The only thing we do is pass the ball to Quaresma or Janer when he plays and expect them to cross. I mean, Janer, you allow Janer to cross from 60 meters, what the fuck, 60 meters. Quaresma, I mean, he's playing okay, he has 10 assists, but of course he has 10 assists. He gets to cross like 60 times a game. Yeah, eventually someone will tap that ball in, but come on, there is no system whatsoever. Our center is basically non-existent. We got Adem Ljajic. Kaan and I talked about it. He said he is our solution, and I agreed with him. But I thought Adem Ljajic would actually make us play some football through the center, so we would play actually like 50-60 football, like when we used in tiki-taka with Oljai and Sosa. But no, still the same old tactics. We get the ball from Vida Pepe, which I'm also mad about, because he is allowed to play like hundreds of long balls a game. And the ball goes to Quaresma, and all we do is cross. The ball goes to Babel. Babel passed the ball to Quaresma. He runs inside the box and expects a cross. Well, what the fuck? Adem Ljajic, non-existent in our play. Also, Jakub, he plays terrible, yes, but non-existent in our play. Even Medel, man. I see Medel cross sometimes. It makes me so mad. I mean, Şenol Güneş, we just have to say thank you, man, to him. So because he just doesn't know what you're doing. The same old interview after every fucking game. We draw, we win or lose. We were in control. We did not expect to concede a goal. That goal shocked us, and then we played bad. We will work things out and play better next time. No, we won't. We won 1 game out of the last 8 games. That's just terrible, and it means you just don't fucking learn. I am fucking mad. And now, I am the most mad about the fucking board. Fikret Orman, fuck off. You put down Erdal Torunoğulları, you put down Ahmet Nurçebi. Those guys were with us in our prime. They were the main reasons for our prime. Mario Gomez, Jose Sosa, who got these players to us? Or who got all those loans from the banks? Who was responsible for that? That was Erdal Torunoğulları. That was Ahmet Nurçebi. But no, you have to keep your Mykonos friends with you. It just doesn't make any sense. Those Mykonos friends, where are they now? They took full responsibility when all those supposedly great transfers came. And now, where are they? Where are they taking responsibility? All they do is taking commission out of those transfers. And what I do not understand is, we have great player sales, but where is the money? 23 million euros from Cenk. Where is the fucking money? We didn't even spend any of it. It just drives me crazy, man. I swear. And last thing I want to say is about this whole Beşiktaş thing right now. I think sacking Şenol Güneş is what should happen, but I also think it is not the solution, because the problem currently lies much deeper. Our club has become just a playing tool of a few guys at the board. For example, also Metin Albayrak. They do whatever they want. They get the commission out of the transfers. I mean, yeah, sacking Şenol is a good thing to do, probably. It should happen. But when that happens, what will happen? Will we instantly get better players, or will we not get those commissioned players like Wagner Love, Negredo, etc.? No, it will be the same. So I think if I have to give it the ratios from where the problems lie, it's like, I think 40% Şenol Güneş, 40% board, 20% the players. I want to end with, well, this is this for the first time in my life, I actually hate watching Beşiktaş play. Even when we got 6 or something, I enjoyed watching Beşiktaş back then. In the Feda season, I loved watching Beşiktaş back then. But now, I just hate it, man. I want to end with a quote from The Dark Knight, which I love and which I think is applicable to both Şenol Güneş and Fikret Orman. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Mic down.
Mic fucking drop.
Wow, I think I gotta cue the audience applause for that one. I only pulled it out for Kaan's grand entrance, but I don't even have anything to say, honestly. I agree wholeheartedly with everything. Everything except the one sort of like fact check I have to make is he was like, what about the money with Cenk Tosun? We've already kind of talked about that. That clearly just went right into our debts that have accumulated over the years.
But I think this is an emotion. This is a sorry, my microphone was down. I think this is a very clear emotional, and this is what we want, raw emotion from people. I think what Salih's I think this is something that a lot of Beşiktaş fans share. I think this exact opinion. I think a large portion, if he put it in 40% the board, 40% channel, 20% the players. I think that if we put it into percentages, I think we have 20 or so percent that think like Danny. I think there's a lot of people out still, I think, that are trying to see the positives, and I commend that in a way. But on the other side, I do think it's kind of putting your hand in the sand. And then I think that there's people who are looking at this very rationally, or trying to look at it rationally. Like I think Kartal and Özcan have some rational thoughts for sure. I think their reasoning, we haven't spoken this on the podcast, but their reasoning for maybe not playing Karius and all that, I think that's all rational things. And they're, but I think the majority of players, the majority of fans think like Salih. I think that 50-60% of people are thinking like this. I think there's a lot of F-bombs. We still have a couple more here. We still have Aaron coming up, and then we still
Ilke.
have Ilke.
Yeah.
Okay, so we still have AaronEArmstrong from Beşiktaş Talk, who's going to share his opinion as well. But Salih, I think I could nitpick and I could dissect what he said, and I could say, well, this isn't, this and this, but this is emotion. This is what we want.
And
I don't really want to be.
Echoes a lot of what we've said, with perhaps a little bit more vitriol, but
for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, certainly, I think for
is...
those of us who've been fans long enough to have been through hard times, been pleasantly surprised by the good times of late, even. So I really didn't see it coming for a period there. But, I think a lot of us feel that way as far as the disappointment goes. Where we are now compared to where we thought we could be just a couple years ago.
Yeah, and that's a huge disappointment for sure. But I think it just comes back. It's a recurring theme. Just the fact that I think a lot of people have this. We aren't happy watching Beşiktaş play right now. I think it's the single worst thing that whoever is responsible could have done, is taken
the joy out of watching
away.
The club.
Yeah, that is the worst thing you can do. That's an unforgivable.
It's like Cruella de Vil levels of cruelty.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to Aaron. Aaron's got his views, his opinions. He's got some great insights as well. So let's have a listen there.
Well, we're in the middle of a crisis as a club. Arguably, one of the worst starts to a season in our history, and nothing's been clicking for us. Personally, I believe that the problem starts with the board. It wouldn't be wrong to say that they haven't been transparent enough lately. The latest leaks regarding agent Ahmet Bulut are proper dodgy and can cause serious problems. We all know how active he was during, along the course of the past 2 years when we signed Pepe and Negredo. He was involved, and the leaks have revealed that he took a good amount of money in commission fees, and this could damage the club in a serious manner. And the board, we're talking about the board, you have to admit that they have been really, really sloppy during the summer transfer window, and did not do a good job replacing our key players. We knew that Talisca would leave a long time ago, and they were supposed to find his replacement. Actually, they were supposed to search for a replacement for him, but we literally signed Ljajic in the last minute. And this proves that they didn't pay enough attention. They didn't give the necessary amount of efforts when finding replacements. And personally, I believe that we had the worst transfer window in the last few years. Like, this was the worst transfer window we had in the last few years. And we have to talk about the manager as well, Ganesh. Since he came here, he has been fantastic. The first 2 years we won back-to-back championships, and last year, of course, like in Europe, we were really, really success will be achieved a lot. But this year he hasn't been himself. This season he hasn't been himself. I feel like he's been too stubborn with his play choices and tactical approach. This results in bad outcomes and therefore damages the players, because things are not going good on the pitch. We get outclassed by mid-table sides, and the fans get frustrated as a result. They get disappointed and they start turning their backs on the players, and it's like a chain reaction. This affects the players and it damages the players even. We all know what happened in the last few games. Jacob even got booed off the pitch, and during that Genk game there wasn't a single player, maybe only Gökhan Gönül, because he was fighting really hard, that didn't get booed. And when you look at it, we're facing serious problems here, both on and off the pitch. Latest, news broke out today about how Tolga Arslan was demoted, because of his actions, and this kind of proves that inside the dressing room, things are not all right. I believe to solve this, I can't blame the players. First of all, personally, I can't blame the players because they can't do well in such a system. Şenol Güneş is not tinkering enough, because if something's not going good, you have to try some changes, try some innovations and other stuff. But he's being we've played with the same formation, with most of the time with the same players, and this is not working well. Personally, I can still, put the blame on some players, but a few of the players. But in general, players are not the issue here, in my opinion. Moving forward, we have to admit that the board and the manager should show some transparency and should prove to the fans that they are still driven for success. Because when Fikret Orman first took over, he was doing a lot both on and off the pitch, but I can't see the same enthusiasm anymore. And this affects the players as well. When the officials are not doing well, the players can't be expected to do well, in my opinion. And overall, it has to start with the board. The board has to be more transparent about their actions, about their decisions and all that. And of course, the manager has to do the same. He has to show that he's trying, because doing the same thing in each game is not a good way of proving to the fans that you still care. And I don't think that sacking Şenol Güneş at this point would solve problems all in an instant. It could cause some changes, kickstart some positive reactions from the players, but it won't solve the problems all around, because it starts, as I said, it starts with the board. The board has to show to the fans that they still care. I can't see it anymore. Personally, as a fan, I can't. When I look at Fikret Orman, I can't say that he's the same person he was 3 or 4 years ago. And as I said, he's the most important figure in this club. He has to show. He has to prove that he's still in the game, and this should basically kind of affect all the other people in the club. And as I've said, we've got to be more positive about it. So personally, I don't believe sacking Şenol Güneş or the board resigning will solve the problems at this point, because they have to do it themselves first. If we can't see some good results or good outcomes in the upcoming weeks, then we can do that final solution thing, because we wouldn't have any other option. But for now, just like sacking Şenol Güneş and like letting one of the assistant managers, preferably Guti, take over would solve it in the short period, but in the long period it wouldn't be quite effective in my opinion. Maybe at the end of the season when things are not going well, when we finish in a disappointing manner, then we can think about it. But for now, we have to go with what we have in our hand, you know. That's what I believe in. That's what I think. You know, Şenol Güneş should be more innovative and more open-minded about his decisions. And I want to talk about Quaresma here as well. In the last few games, when you look at the statistics, he looks like he's the best player we have right now. But if you actually watch the games, you can see that he's actually damaging the team by playing selfishly and not respecting his fellow teammates. We've seen it in the last game, his actions regarding Laic and other players. I believe this is damaging as well, because when one player plays real bad, he will get some bad reactions from the fans. But when Quaresma does the same stuff, he doesn't get criticized for it, and this kind of affects the players. So that's what I believe in personally, and Quaresma has to be more disciplined about his actions and has to respect his fellow teammates. Besides that, as I've said, to sum up, I believe the board has to go forward with a more positive approach, more transparent approach, and the manager should follow. And I believe that this will affect the players as well in a positive manner. And we should get better and better during each game and finally meet the expectations, you know.
So that's Aaron, and again, you know, I don't disagree with very much. If I'm gonna nitpick, my one main point of contention would be that I don't think this transfer window was an utter failure insofar as we got two good players on deals that, you know, by getting the 1 year loan and the 2 year loan, we extended out the sort of damage financially.
But they replaced players, good players, key players that went out.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's true, and there were sort of emergency buys in that regard. And we didn't address the main.
And came late.
Just like throughout all of that, despite all of that, we didn't address the main need, which was just, you know, having someone up front to rely on for goals. So, you know, it was definitely not a shining example of a transfer window you'd want to like talk about for very long, but. I think that in a way we did, as far as bringing back returns for the guys who we had to let go of, I thought we did all right. In fact, I thought we did pretty well. I'll even say I thought we did pretty well. And I think by bringing in Ljajic instead of Talisca, you're actually filling a greater need, because you're also addressing our need for distribution through the middle.
Yep.
But that doesn't change tactics. That doesn't change the fact that we're not utilizing this new ability of ours. But yeah, besides that, to echo Aaron's point, right, and Kaan mentioned this, and I think the classic definition of insanity is, right, when you do the same thing and expect different results.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's kind of what's going on here.
And Salih had, I think, his quote that he used from The Dark Knight, you know, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain. I think that's like, if we would have titles on our episodes, that would be the title, because
that would be it.
It's just such. I think that so applies to Şenol Güneş and Fikret Orman. And I think
if we had like a video element, I think that would be like the screen would go dark as we were coming in from the intro, and we'd have that quote. It really is. It's apt.
Then another thing that Aaron said, where there's a lack of transparency from the board. I agree. I'm not sure if I'm going to agree for the same reasons that he might be thinking. But for example, you know, one of the things that's been bothering me is the lack of transparency when reporting transfers to CAP, Before, we always used to disclose the duration of a contract, the bonuses, the wages. We used to disclose the financial details of all the transfers, and now we're not doing that anymore. And the reason
now you have to dig around to find
the
out
reason,
what's going on.
the reason why we're not doing it anymore is because we don't have to do it anymore. Because you only need to report it if it's equal to, I don't know the exact percentage. I think it's either 2 or 4% or something of your total worth or something like that. And then I'm sure that John can far better explain that once we have him on again. But the thing is, because we have grown, because the value of our club has increased so dramatically over the past couple of years, doesn't mean we don't have a very deep pit of debt. We still definitely do. But the value of the club has increased a lot because of our new stadium, which adds a lot of value, because of the good seasons we've had, because of the success we've had in Europe, all that kind of stuff. So the value of the club has increased. So we aren't technically supposed to disclose fees under a certain amount. Like, for example, let's say under 4 million euros, we probably don't have to disclose that. But the fact that we're not doing that is something that bothers me, because I think transparency is very important. And I always criticize Fenerbahce for not doing that. And we can see now that they've slowly but surely built a huge pit of debt, 620 million euros in fact. And for years people had no clue what was going on, because Azizler was fudging the numbers, was and all that kind of stuff, and they weren't putting stuff out there. They weren't being transparent, so it was really difficult to realize how far they had fallen, and I'm kind of worried that we're doing the same. And I don't really think that was Aaron's point when he said the lack of transparency, but there definitely is a lack of transparency on a lot of different levels. And
just to tie into your last point, as far as having a stadium and the revenue that comes with that, for all the fans that wanted to complain about the Shakira concert and what it did to the pitch, like, we might need a few more of those, honestly, because at least that's revenue that's actually going to the club.
That's another thing, though, where question marks have been raised, because supposedly the club really didn't earn a lot on that, or even anything, or whatever. And I don't know. There should be transparency on that kind of stuff too. I think that if you do a concert like that, maybe it is wise to say, look, the club made, let's say, 3 million euros on that concert profit.
Yeah,
I think
at least just to quiet down the boo boys.
If you put that type of information out there, I think that people won't complain as much, because okay, well, fucked up our pitch, but it was a really good financial deal for us. I'm not saying that was the case, but I think that transparency from the club is something we can expect. I think a lot of the criticism that the board are getting upon themselves is their own fault, because, like Aaron says,
lack of transparency.
Lack of transparency. If you are transparent with your fans and you communicate, communication is definitely an issue too. If you communicate properly with your fan base, I think you can avoid a lot of backlash. I think if you're honest with your fans and don't, because that's one of the biggest problems in Turkey in general, is that, a lot of fans aren't interested in the financial aspect of things, and they prefer to be blissfully ignorant to it, I think. But
and these little cutesy tootsy, like Kagawa Bridge, allusions to things, and not really telling us what you're actually doing on the market.
I think
cut it out.
That kind of stuff is kind of fun, though. I kind of like.
Yeah, maybe.
But then
if we're in a period of success,
but then you have to follow
if we have the patience to be taking jokes like that, but like, you don't make a joke about Kagawa Bridge and then like fumble for 2 weeks and then bring someone in the last minute. Like, that's when it's like, okay, that's cute, but come on, guy, like, could you just explain what's actually happening for a minute, please?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's no reason to. I mean, yeah, of course, it's kind of difficult sometimes. You can't always be as transparent, especially in the transfer window. You don't want to put all the information out there for everyone to know, because if you say, look, we're working on this player and we're negotiating, then you know how Fenerbahce are, even Galatasaray, how they are.
Right,
I mean, they're always going to try and pounce on our targets. So I get that in the transfer period, you're not being super transparent about that kind of stuff, but there's other stuff you need to be transparent about, communicating about the financial things, all that kind of stuff. And
the behind the scenes, not necessarily who you're making transactions for, but like, what are the things that are contributing to
And
the decision making.
And you know what?
Like
I mean,
what
there's
kind
other
of
stuff.
players
Like
might be-
I don't blame them. I don't blame Fikret Orman for going on holiday in the summer. I am personally of the opinion that transfers aren't really his responsibility. There's other people who are responsible for that. So if he's going to be in Mykonos or whatever in the summer, whatever, do what you want. But maybe dial back on the Instagram posts,
which is like a theme throughout the season for a number of individuals. But,
yeah.
Then let's round it out, Kaan. Let's wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
We've got one last contributor, a Beşiktaş international.
Ilke Tunali is our designated Twitter. How do I? Yeah, he live tweets the games. He tweets.
Tweeter.
Yeah, or Twitter. He does a lot of. He works very hard on our Twitter platform. So thank you very much for that, Ilke. And he actually found us through the podcast a couple of weeks ago when we said that we needed some help. So
from the swamps of Florida.
And he's done a great job. But again, somebody who moved from Turkey to a different country. So Ilke moved to the United States. He lives in Florida.
My one comment I want to say is I think we've done a fantastic, and including ourselves, but this podcast does a great job of showing the diversity within the Turkish diaspora, right? Like we're hearing so many accents between ourselves, but all of these individuals, of course, Danny Pearce is not, it doesn't count, but
of course
he
counts.
Friend nonetheless. But I mean, not within the Turkish diaspora, right?
Oh
He's
yeah.
A
Okay.
Turk.
Yeah.
But amongst all of these Turks, all these accents, it just shows you how widespread us Turks have
It's just a
become.
shame we don't have a German Turk who sent in something because a nice German accent would have been very nice,
Well, I'm sure we can find someone. That shouldn't be hard.
Okay.
But
Anyway.
those Glasgow accents really
Those
make up for it.
Great. Anyway, let's
So Ilke from the swamps of Florida. What do you got to say, Ilke Tunali?
So this is Ilke, and I'm currently in Florida, the Sunshine State. However, thanks to Beşiktaş, we don't really see sun right now. Like, it's all black clouds for us. And like most of the Beşiktaş fans, I'm also very sad about the current status of the club. I mean, after those back-to-back championships, many of us, including me, thought that we would be dominating the league and maybe win like 5 championships in a row. It was a logical thinking because all our rivals were bad, and we seemed to be managed by a board which is doing a good job, and we had a good team, so it was logical to be the Juventus of Turkey. But of course that was an illusion, I guess, and it faded away next year, even though we had a great Champions League run. And this year we literally see the bottom, I guess we can say that. We're even, worse than our Veda season. And I know I told this before, but you need at least 72 points to win the championship. That's usually the case, and to get that 72 points we need 18 wins out of 22 games, and I don't see any way we're getting those 18 wins unless like a blue moon all of a sudden comes out. So it looks like the season is over for us, but a more realistic goal should be getting the Champions League, getting back to the Champions League by becoming second position. So if we look at the question, like the question is actually how did we end up here? And I think most of it is mentally this team has dissolved and we lost confidence. Like the team has no confidence to itself. And I blame the board. The majority of my blame goes to the board because they didn't get a striker and they sold the only proper striker we had. And a striker is so important that you can't really win games without a good striker most of the time because you need to just get the goal. And they can win you games even if you play shit. And the confidence you gain from scoring a goal is like so high. It creates a big synergy around the team. And all the players like get together. Think about the goal. You just celebrate all team together. All 10 players get together when you score. It's a big synergy. Yeah. And also, as with every sport, you can never win if you have doubt on yourself or your team, and we lack that at the moment. So we can put that part also on Şenol Güneş, because I still think our team is better than 18 point in 12 matches team. So we're much better than that. That's for sure. And Şenol Güneş seems to have lost his ambition. He seems full after those two titles, and he's like, okay, that's enough for me. And I don't see a guy who's giving his everything to the team anymore. So I feel like he also should change after a big applause from the fans. Like, it should be a proper way to change the coach. I don't think we should just sack him and say goodbye. We should give him credit for all what he has done to the team. But I don't think Guti should be our next coach. I think that's a big gamble, because we don't have enough evidence that he will be successful as a coach. To be honest, he is more likely to be successful in Real Madrid than Beşiktaş, because Real Madrid has a bunch of good guys, and you basically need a good, like a brother, quote unquote brother, on the team as a coach, and that could work. But while in Beşiktaş, you need some tactical stuff involved as a coach. So my option for the coach is Slaven Bilic, actually, because I think he has proven that he can start a team from the scratch and create a decent team in a year or two. And I don't believe he's a loser, because people say that, but I don't believe that, because he doesn't win derbies and all. And well, if you look at those derbies in the Bilic seasons, you'll see that the referees just butchered us and gave red cards in every game, and our best players got banned right before derbies. And we were kind of unlucky too, actually, in those derbies, even though we played 10 men and we just couldn't score. So I don't think that's a relevant excuse for him, for not getting him. And also the race was really tight those years, if you think about it. So I think after his Premier League experience, I really think Bilic is a good option for our team if he's available and if he wants it too, I guess. So that's about it, about what I want to say. And I want to thank Kaan and Sinan for giving us this chance to speak out. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you for giving us this content. For sure. And nice points. I have a feeling Kaan and I might disagree on this one point. I don't hate the Slaven Bilic idea. I think... Here's my thinking. I don't agree that he's definitely not where I go.
I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but I don't hate it either.
Whoa, Kaan, look at that! He's turned the corner. Well, and here's my thinking. It's gonna probably we've been talking about how it could be the Guven Yalcin Durakan type of format that we're gonna be moving towards, right? Getting in young guys who aren't very good right now. And if we're talking about a project, right? If we're talking about building something from the ground up, which it seems like we're going to have to do whether we want to or not financially. He was instrumental, I think, in developing that core unit that, won us those 2 championships. I think he was an excellent coach as far as building camaraderie, fighting spirit, kind of unconventional, thinking outside of the box type of stuff.
I thought tactically he was not too bad either.
That's what I mean. He was free flowing with his ideas a little bit, and that probably is an extension of his personality. He's a bit of a character as well, but that actually made me like him quite a bit. His whole heavy metal side or whatever that was. No, and I think he was instrumental in our success. Actually, that kind of developed
For
into
sure.
two titles after he left, of course. But.
He laid the foundations for the double title winning team that Şenol Güneş went on forward. I do think that Şenol Güneş reaped the harvest of what Slaven Bilic sowed. I do think that Slaven Bilic did add that little Şenol Güneş did add that little extra thing once we were close to a finished product, so to speak.
Those extra wrinkles, that we needed.
But I wholeheartedly agree. I think if we're gonna be building a new team, I think from what I'm seeing from Şenol right now, I think that maybe if he would start with a clean slate and he would come in now, I would trust Şenol to do it, but not with the history that he has with players, at the club and all that.
I see what you mean, right?
I just think
if he was coming in, to this as if it was a project where he's building from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
But like having already been a part of the process, that period of success, I think it's hard for him to look back. Kind of, it's hard for him to scale down his expectations and hopes for the club, right?
Like a wise man once said, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes.
It all depends from a certain point of view.
Oh man, I love it.
And this is we are getting some great quotes here
Only
today.
a Sith deals in absolutes. That's I love it.
But the thing is, I was very disillusioned with Bilic towards the end of the 2014-15 season. I think that one of my biggest disappointments with him was that I kind of felt that he put, like, once we defeated Liverpool in the Europa League, and I think it was kind of clear that he was going to get a job in the Premier League the following season, I kind of felt that that the magic was suddenly gone. And maybe it was a case of the players realizing, you're going to be gone next season or something. I don't know what it was, but I was very happy with Bilic the first 18 months or so.
Yeah.
I definitely, I don't agree with the whole loser thing either, because like Ilke correctly pointed out, we got butchered by the refs in the derbies back in those days. That was definitely a case. I remember that one derby where Felipe Melo just plants his elbow in Vili's face, and I think Vili was even bleeding and stuff, and he didn't even get a yellow card. Now today, with VAR, that would probably be a red card. But the worst thing is that then in the second half, the guy went and scored the goal and opened the scoring from a corner kick while he should have been off the field. And then Vili, I think in that same game, got sent off.
I remember exactly.
That
was one of the most traumatic, that stretch of derbies, honestly. But yeah, in terms of disillusioning me to the referees and the impact they could have on us. But I like this thought, honestly. In some ways,
it's never going to happen. Though, I think I really can't see it happen.
I could see, because like Slaven Bilic
Bilic
often, on his Instagram account and stuff, he often like signals his fondness for Beşiktaş, that he's watching matches. He wishes luck to them on big match days. So he clearly, I think, I could imagine if the position opened up, he might give them a call. But I don't know.
I think he's working in the sandbox right now.
I don't think the board goes back.
But the thing I really liked about Bilic is that I liked his staff. I think he had a really good staff with Edin Terzic, with Jurcevic and all that stuff. And I think, and that's one of those things where we talk about Guti. I think when you put Guti in charge, you need to surround him with his staff. I think that's going to be one of those things. Like if you want to I think the most important thing is if you have a foreign coach, and I'm not one of those people that is like, a foreign coach in Turkey doesn't work, because that's bullshit.
I don't like
it.
It
works fine, but you need someone who knows what he's getting into and who has a good
and a board with the patience to let it happen.
Not necessarily patience. I think a good coach can get results relatively quickly. I don't know if Guti is ready for the job, but anyway, I think Ilke raises some really good points as well. I think we've heard a lot of varying opinions, a lot of varying views. We've heard the very emotional opinions of Salih. We've heard the kind of still positive Danny just being, well, you know what, better luck next time. But that's kind of what I was like last season. I was like, you know what? Okay, fine. This season we had a great Champions League campaign, but the league season is lost. But next season we'll recover, and it didn't happen. And I think that the attitude that Danny has right now, I think that kind of, if too many people share that, and I for example, the board right now clearly do, because they're seemingly not seeing a problem. There's no problem with channel. We're going to continue with channel and all that stuff. So I think that's going to be harmful for the club in the long run and in the short term as well. But this is already a really long episode. Sinan, do you have anything else to add or
besides that? Take us out, Kaan. What's like the? There's nothing to say. I love all the contributions. Thank you to everyone for doing that. For those of you who are on the fence about doing an after the beat, this was your wake up call, right? This is the extent to which you can be a part of this phenomenon that is the Black Eagles podcast. But you've got to contribute.
And whether we agree with you or not, it doesn't matter, because you're a Beşiktaş fan. You're entitled to your opinion about the club.
And if you think your opinion is not being represented on the show, you're the one who can make it happen. Step up to the plate. So send us out, Kaan.
Yeah, so I'm back right now. My laptop just died, so if the sound quality suddenly changed, that's why. But yeah, like Sinan said, thanks to everyone for your contributions. Love hearing from all of you guys and girls. If there's any girls listening, hey, please contribute as well with your submissions for After the Beep or whenever we do another sort of episode like this. But we really appreciate it. And you know, like I said, whether Sinan and I agree with you or we don't, it doesn't matter, because your opinion surely represents
a segment,
a portion
you're
of
not
the
alone out there.
a segment of the Beşiktaş fanhood. So I am 100% certain that there's going to be plenty of Beşiktaş fans who listen to what Danny says and agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm sure there are fans who are agreeing with it. And the proof is in the pudding, because we still hear it every week during the home games. The fans are chanting Şenol Güneş's name. So clearly not all fans have come to the point of he needs to go. I definitely have. That doesn't mean that I don't respect and admire and love him. As much as you can love someone you don't know.
And look, Kaan and I are doing this out of the kindness of our hearts. We're not getting paid anything. We are contributing, donating our time to this because we love this team and we're all a part of this community. And as such, we definitely, this should serve as a forum for all of your opinions. And we welcome, I actually welcome differing opinions because I think it spices things up. Kaan and I, in our old age, have far too often...
Speak for yourself.
But we far too often find ourselves on the same side of things because I think we've seen so much of the club together, and we've seen all of these phases, so that we kind of, I think, once you have,
we've known each other for so long,
and we've interacted, but once you've seen enough of that sort of big picture, I think like most old Beşiktaş fans I've communicated with share our sentiment for the most part and our frustrations. But so I think it's imperative on us to find differing opinions and people who don't share that kind of
Yeah, and once again, I think that it is the responsibility of the fans to hold people accountable for when things aren't going well. I don't think that you're a fair weather fan for being critical. On the contrary, I think fair weather fans are the people that go to the stadium and fill the stadium with 50,000 people, like a certain club, when they're winning games and on title course, and then when they lose at home against Trabzonspor the next week,
burn the stadium down.
so suddenly 30,000 people stay home. Those are fair weather fans, the people that only show up for the good days. And I think that it's important that to stick with, like Danny said, you have to stick with the club. I completely agree, but sticking with the club doesn't mean that you have to be blind to the problems and I think jeering and booing when it's warranted is a positive form as well of supporting. In a way, it sounds strange, but it is. I think you have to force change sometimes.
It's
that's
just
sometimes
like protest in a democracy, right? Like sometimes people's voices need to be heard. Yeah.
When the club's officials aren't doing what they need to be doing and realizing that keeping on the coach longer than they are doing right now is going to long-term and short-term harm the club, then fans need to start doing something. Well, you know, when the coach doesn't realize that leaving Tolga Zengin in goal, is going to damage and hurt the club, then fans have to do something.
And just like with the democracy, right? Like the people who are out in the streets yelling and booing, they're the ones who are making an effort to be out in the streets doing that out of a love for that thing. And that absolutely stands for our club. We don't take the time to record these things and like go through all the post-production, you know, all the work that goes into this because, you know, we don't love this club, right?
We could just record and we could just put out a crappy, something that sounds like horseshit out there. But I mean, the amount of effort that goes into our episodes, we put a lot of care into them, and we've pumped a lot of our own money into this project to I think offer something to the community that is definitely has value. And I think, you know, having our listenership and the people sending in their opinions and all that kind of stuff, I think it strengthens the community, even though the English-speaking Beşiktaş community is only a small segment. But no matter how small a segment of the community is, it's important. And that's also what I want to, the thing I was saying earlier, where our opinions differ. For example, with Danny, that doesn't make his opinion any less important.
And so we welcome it, and we welcome anyone else with supporting or differing opinions from here on out. If
we'd all agree, how boring would it be if we'd all agree?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so once again, everyone, thank you very much. We'll be posting all the Twitter tags, handles from people who contributed to the podcast today in the podcast description. As always, you can find everything you need in terms of our Twitter accounts, Beşiktaş International Twitter account, the podcast Twitter account. And people, please share the podcast with your friends, with your family, with your pets, with everyone that you can share. Help us continue to grow the Black Eagles podcast and the community. And in that light, if you want to join the conversation, join us on Discord. We started a new server there recently, and then it's really not that lively yet, so I hope to get some more people on there. But definitely you can put some of your opinions on there. If you don't like sending in your after the beeps because you're shy or whatever, but you do want to ask a question, you can always reach us on Discord or reach us on Twitter. Send us your questions if you have any, and hopefully we'll have more hashtag Twin Talk coming up as well in the coming weeks. But that's it for me. Sinan, please take us out unless you've got anything more to add.
I do. I have one more very, very important point to add. In fact, we will be back on Saturday or Sunday because Beşiktaş is going to be back playing Ankaragücü on Saturday, 11 a.m. here, which makes it 6 p.m. Istanbul, I believe. So 5 p.m.
That's gonna be fun.
And so we'll be back
early.
Shortly thereafter, of course, with our usual match review. Hopefully not doing anything redundant, because we'll be talking about how amazing all these changes have been and everything is different and better. But realistically, we'll probably be back with our crabby selves.
Oh my god, I'm already a little... Don't even want to think about it.
But so yeah, stay tuned. Guys, this was a fun...
Girls.
Guys, ladies, everyone. This was a fun, long episode. I hope you guys enjoyed all of our guests. And as always, go Beşiktaş!
And it was great speaking to you again. It's been a while.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.